More than 33,000 people are reported to have died after last week's earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Those who survived are struggling after being displaced from their homes. The FT's Raya Jalabi was just in the city of Gaziantep.
As soon as I got to Gaziantep, I just saw makeshift tents all over the city, people sort of burning bonfires with whatever they could find to stay warm because the temperatures have been absolutely freezing all week. And they're just sort of sitting outside, they're looking shell-shocked and completely grief-stricken.
Gaziantep is also a city where many Syrians found refuge after fleeing their country's civil war. Raya spoke to them and found that they are especially vulnerable after the earthquake.
In the last few years, as the sort of economic crisis has started to bite in Turkey, a lot of Turks have turned more hostile to the Syrian population there. So I was talking to a lot of the refugees this week who were saying that there's been so many increasing tensions between Turks and Syrians in the last few years that this sort of felt like a final straw. I was talking to this woman, Layal Khalif, and she sort of fled Syria years ago and made her way up to Akjakale. And she was talking to me about how much tension there had been just in the last week. She said as soon as the earthquake hit, she went to seek shelter with her entire family at the nearby mosque. And at one point, they were kicked out of the mosque by Turks, and some of them, their direct neighbors, who said that the shelter should only be open to Turks.
Raya, what else did you find when you spoke to Syrians in Turkey? And how are they managing in the aftermath of the earthquake? Do they have the same sort of access to aid as Turks?
For many Turks in southern Turkey, they generally tend to have a social network or family in other parts of the country. So as they've all been fleeing northward in the last week to seek safety elsewhere, they have that option. But for many Syrians, they don't. They either don't have the money, they don't have the social network, and in many cases, they don't have the legal ability to move across provinces. So they're sort of stuck in place. And in many of the places that I was visiting this week, they're terrified of staying in a city where we're still feeling aftershocks 6 days later. And especially for Syrians who lived for years under bombs and shelling in Syria, they come to Turkey looking for safety, and all of a sudden this earthquake in the early hours of the night just jolts them out of bed and takes them straight back to being in Syria. I had so many people who were telling me it felt like I was back in that moment where I almost died in that shelling in Aleppo. And it's heartbreaking to hear that they have to relive this trauma over and over again.
What else did they tell you, Raya? Is there anything that they said that sticks out in your mind?
A lot of the refugees that I was talking to, they're afraid that they're going to be left behind by the Turkish state because these years of increased hostilities has left them afraid that they're going to get left out at receiving government resources. And of course, there's an election coming up in a few months, and the Syrian refugee issue has been a political football between political parties in Turkey for a while now. Maybe aid will be weaponized as a political tool to garner more votes, because there has been increasing anger rising this week across certain areas. My colleague Ayla was in Hatay province today, and she was talking about how in a lot of her interviews, a lot of the Turks were complaining that the Syrians were stealing aid and that they were being favored and treated better. And so there's a risk that that's going to get politicized in the next few weeks and months.
Raya Jalabi is the FT's Middle East correspondent. Social media companies are leaning into short-form videos. TikTok is probably the most well-known one, but a big rival, YouTube, has upped the competition with a new revenue-sharing plan. It's aimed at luring content creators away from TikTok. To find out more, I'm joined by our technology reporter, Christina Criddle. Hey, Christina.
Hi.
All right, so first of all, let's just kind of lay the groundwork here. What we're talking about here are the short, attention-grabbing videos that made TikTok so popular. So not just TikTok, we see them on Instagram's Reels and a few other places as well. And now YouTube has something called YouTube Shorts. What's that all about?
Yeah, so when TikTok really blew up during the pandemic, there was this huge rush towards short-form video, or what's also known as snackable content. It seemed that younger audiences especially were just wanting to watch very short clips of content on social media, and that's then led to companies like YouTube and Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram, to release basically copycat features. And they've been really successful too.
Which content creators are we talking about here? Anyone that I might recognize?
I mean, you're looking at people like Mr. Beast.
If I give you $100, would you go to Paris to get me a baguette? No. If I give you
I've heard of Mr. Beast. I looked him up for this conversation, yes.
There are a lot of very popular short form creators. It kind of depends on what you're interested in, though. One of the creators I chatted to for my piece, Lisa Nguyen, she specializes in food content, short form food content.
Today is day 27.75 of my instant ramen challenge, and I had a dream about this smoked Gouda. Maybe it even counts as a nightmare because the cheese just wouldn't melt. I've used it in a couple of grilled cheeses so far.
And she became really popular on TikTok, but then since trying out shorts on YouTube, has found that she's more popular on there and actually makes more money on there. So she's kind of shifted a lot of effort towards YouTube. And one of the things she also likes about YouTube is the fact that she can make longer content. So some videos where you can't really explain how to cook something in 60 seconds, she can make a longer video about it and still do it on the same platform. And that's one of the things that YouTube is really pushing here. You know, you can do all sorts of content for all different people and you can just stay on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the money-making aspect of this. How do content creators make money and how does YouTube make money?
Well, so far there has been these things called creator funds where creators can apply to get a certain amount of money from a fund by the social media platform like TikTok or YouTube. They can also make money through brand partnerships if they do advertising. So that's a deal made with a brand to promote their products. But now there's this thing which is revenue sharing, which YouTube has had for a long time on its longer form videos, but has introduced to shorts. And that is where they pull together the advertising revenue, then they take off the licensing fees for any music used, and then they split the profits between the creators and YouTube, giving the creators 45% and taking the rest.
What do you think is significant about that?
It seems to be a much more generous offering than other platforms at the moment. TikTok has a form of revenue sharing, but it's only for the top 4% of creators on TikTok. And even then, although it's a 50-50 split of advertising revenue, there have been some complaints from creators who are saying that they're just not making very much. Whereas this on YouTube, it applies to a much wider sphere of creators. And YouTube has a track record of being able to pay creators, and it has kept them quite loyal over all of its years of being popular. So I think at the moment it is a really interesting offering. Creators I speak to are really excited about it as they feel they can trust YouTube to give them revenue. We will see how much more money it gives them, but I think in the moment it's really coming ahead and prioritizing people who make content because they know that they need that to be able to serve advertising.
Well, I'll have to get more into TikTok and YouTube then, Christina, to check it out.
Get on it.
Christina Cradell is the FT's technology reporter. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.
Before we go, global markets got a shock on Friday. Reports came out that Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida would tap an outsider as the next chief of the Bank of Japan. Kazuo Ueda is an academic and a respected monetary policy expert, but he's not from the policy establishment. Some analysts wonder if he was chosen because few others wanted the job. Nevertheless, lawmakers are expected to approve him on Tuesday, and if they do, it would be the first time in post-war Japan that an academic leads the BOJ.
And next, the breaking news. We are learning that Trump's legal team has turned over another folder marked classified. That sensitive information also copied onto a laptop. And it comes as Mike Pence's home was searched by FBI agents today. Plus, we're going to travel to what was once a bustling city. Now nothing but ruins. In that earthquake, though, another miraculous story of survival. There are so few, but the ones that are there, we all, of course, can celebrate that moment. An entire family pulled alive after being trapped for more than 100 hours. Breaking news, more classified documents found at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Multiple sources telling CNN that Trump's lawyers turned over these documents to federal prosecutors after they were found searching through boxes at Mar-a-Lago. Now, apparently the documents were also copied onto the laptop of a Trump aide. Federal agents also now seized that. This is all coming as today the FBI found and removed a classified document during a search of former Vice President Mike Pence's home. Evan Perez is out front. Evan, what more are you learning about this folder? I guess let's just start with there. The folder that had classified markings that was found at Mar-a-Lago.
Right. So these documents actually were found by Trump lawyers who were going through boxes at Mar-a-Lago, and they turned over this material as well as a laptop and a thumb drive. It turns out that an aide to the former president who works for his PAC was apparently copying some of these documents onto a thumb drive and a laptop and didn't realize that these items were classified. And so the laptop and the thumb drive, of course, then suddenly are now classified. And so all of this, Aaron, has now been turned over to the FBI, to the Justice Department. This was done in December and January. And, what it tells us is that, the effort by the Justice Department to repossess all of these things that were marked as classified and that they have to investigate, that is still ongoing many months after the former president was subpoenaed and told to turn over everything.
Right. Subpoenaed, told, said he didn't. House was searched, and all of this, and now this stuff is still showing up. Okay, so then there's what happened actually today at Pence's home, and the FBI going through there. Obviously, we know there were documents there. Now they went through. So what does this mean that something else was found? And I just note in the context here that there's a special counsel in the Biden classified documents, the Trump classified documents, but not for Pence.
There is not a special counsel, and it may well be that that this could change the calculus at the Justice Department. We just don't know yet. But in this 5-hour search that happened today, it was done with the consent of the Pences. They were not there at the time, and the FBI went and spent time looking through everything. They retrieved one classified document, or one document that was marked as classified, and 6 other documents that have also been turned over. Now, the question is, what are these documents? Whether it's something that the FBI needs to further investigate to determine the sensitivity of it. And Aaron, there's also the matter of another search that the FBI is going to do. We're told that the Pence team and the FBI are working to set up that search, which is for an office of Mike Pence's think tank, and so that should happen in the coming days. Again, all of this will be put together, and the FBI and the Justice Department will determine whether it means they need to do a full-blown investigation and perhaps even a special counsel, given the fact that Mike Pence is talking about running for president.
Absolutely. He's made it clear. That certainly seems to be the intent. Okay. Evan, thank you very much. So let's go to Ryan Goodman now. So, Ryan, more classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, the thumb drive, the laptop, the folder marked classified. What does this say to you, in the context of multiple subpoenas and searches and hunts, and here we still are?
It's extraordinary in the sense that here we are 2 years out from President Trump's administration and having all these efforts by the Justice Department to recover the documents, and the Justice Department saying in front of the federal judge that they believe there were still classified documents in Trump's possession, and lo and behold, there were. And I think the other piece of the news that's very significant is that this is in the hands or the possession of an aide to Trump. And that's something that a lot of lawyers have been looking for, whether or not there would be a third party. So the key legal term is dissemination. Not just that he's retained the documents, but they were disseminated to a third party, this aide, and on a laptop and a thumb drive is highly unsecure. I do think that ratchets up the legal liability for Trump and the likelihood of any potential indictment.
And when you say indictment again, do you think it's possible that the special counsel Jack Smith could go ahead and do that separate from Biden and there not be one in the Biden case, which of course is a separate special counsel?
I think so. I think the key question under the law is whether or not the individual had knowledge and intent to willfully retain the documents. And there's a lot of information that President Trump did so, and that he himself personally sorted some of the materials from the documents. He personally gave the order to remove some of the boxes from the storage facility. There's nothing like that for Biden. No, absolutely not. Then that if that's the clear differentiator, it exists such that we know it at this point. And now what about at Pence's home? An additional classified document found. There were a dozen documents found that were classified last month. They're now going to be searching Pence's D.C. office, we imagine, any day. So do you think that this means we're going to have a third special counsel? I think it makes it more likely. If they found nothing, it would make it less likely, but they found something. So they found the one document. They found these other 6 pages or 6 documents that are not marked as classified, but the FBI is reviewing them. And I think Attorney General Garland might feel that he needs to do it because it shows that he's even-handed. It looks similar to the Biden case, especially because Pence's team said, we returned everything. Lo and behold, the FBI comes and they find more. All right. So I think that's one of the key questions for Garland. All right. Thank you so very much. And next, as they count
The dead now over 23,000 people killed in that massive earthquake. Rescuers are marveling over what they can. And in this case, the survival of one family found alive 100 hours after the earthquake. We're going to take you there next. Plus, embattled Congressman George Santos claiming he's hard at work, despite the countless controversies around him.
I'm in my office, I'm taking meetings, I'm answering constituent calls.
So what is he actually doing on the job? That story is next.
This week on The Assignment with me, Audie Cornish. When Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest during a game last month, the shock was palpable. It was the latest in a series of stories fueling an argument against the value of watching the sport. All this has led some people to say that they're done watching football. So, who are they? What about this moment is affecting how they see their favorite game? Listen to The Assignment with Audie Cornish on Spotify.
Breaking news. We're learning that a 16-year-old boy has just been pulled alive from the wreckage of the massive earthquake. Pulled alive after being buried alive for 119 hours. 119 hours, and he is alive tonight. Comes as the death toll, though, in Turkey and Syria has climbed to an unbelievable more than 23,000 at this hour. In the depths of despair, though, there is that boy, and there are other small stories of miracles, lives saved. Just see how emotional one man is as he watches his parents and 4 siblings rescued alive. That was after 102 hours. Unimaginable suffering. Jemana Karacha is out front.
The distance, a city that once was. Now it's people left to pick up the pieces of their broken lives. Today, aid made it to this makeshift camp in Iskenderun. Young and old, they dig through the piles of clothes and shoes, essentials for survival now. No one can yet comprehend. Elif comes up to us crying. She's not only lost her home, her only sister is gone. I have no mother, no father, she tells us. She was my everything. In seconds, every life here upended. For days, Fatima hasn't let go of 10-year-old Findak. Whenever he hears sirens, his entire body shakes. When the earthquake happened, I thought it was doomsday, she tells us. We're living an apocalypse. Her daughter Melis was preparing for her wedding. Now they're living in the back of a truck. They say they're thankful to be alive, but it's all just too much. These girls want to show us their tent. They're from Syria, but Turkey is the only home these children have known. Inside the tent, Ibrahim, who fled the war in Syria 10 years ago, tells us he lost 18 members of his extended family in the earthquake. He says he thought the days of carrying his children to safety, protecting them from collapsing buildings, was behind him.
They're saying they were terrified when the earthquake happened, but they're just glad that they are safe. God bless the souls of all those who died.
No parent can shield their child from this reality. Surrounded by death and destruction, there's no escaping this nightmare. Jemana Karacha, CNN, Iskenderun, Turkey.
Up front next, Senator Kyrsten Sinema accusing Congressman George Santos of lying when he said this.
Kyrsten Sinema, as she was walking by the senator from Arizona, she said something to the effects of hang in there, buddy, or something like that.
She says that's an outright lie. And Senator John Fetterman back home after spending the past 2 days in the hospital. What we're learning about his health tonight. New tonight, embattled Republican Congressman George Santos accused of a new lie by one of his own colleagues. Santos making this claim while talking to Newsmax about his heated exchange this week with Senator Mitt Romney. Romney telling Santos, "You don't belong here."
Kyrsten Sinema, as she was walking by the senator from Arizona, she said something to the effects of hang in there, buddy, or something like that. I said, thank you, Madam Senator. She was very polite, very kind-hearted, as I've learned to see her. She's a good person, unlike Mr. Romney, who thinks he's above it all and is in a whole almighty white horse trying to talk to us down on morality.
Of course, the problem with that is Sinema's office says this is a total lie. They say the exchange never happened. It is another example of what has seemingly become typical for the freshman congressman day in and day out. Eva McKend is out front.
I'm in my office, I'm taking meetings, I'm answering constituent calls.
Why did you list the wrong name of your treasurer on your form?
Embattled freshman Congressman George Santos, insisting he's hard at work amid the daily questions over his lies.
I'm the new favorite punching bag in America.
But amidst all the scandal, he's trying to play the role of congressman, signing on to at least a dozen different bills of Republicans he's trying to forge alliances with. Bills dealing with abortion rights, guns, terminating TikTok, repealing the Inflation Reduction Act, and congressional term limits.
I'm signing on to a litany of bills on the House, and we're writing bills out of my office already that are sitting with Ledge Counsel. So as everybody must be wondering at home if I'm getting things done, you betcha we're getting things done, and we're pretty proud of the work we're putting forward.
While some of his fellow GOP have snubbed him, Santos seems to be working hard to make friends on the Hill with some of the most extreme members of Congress. He's also not shy on the House floor, giving several speeches. One on anti-Semitism.
We must also pay tribute to the liberators who rescued millions of people who nearly fell victim to the Holocaust.
Another noting the birthday of one of his Jewish constituents.
Today I rise to honor Mr. Christopher Marion Balaban, a constituent, war hero, and Holocaust survivor in New York's 3rd Congressional District.
Santos previously lied and said he was Jewish and falsely claimed his grandparents were Holocaust survivors. But every day, something new seems to plague him. This week, increasing scrutiny over his claims of charity work with rescued pets. Santos, charged with theft in 2017, accused of writing thousands of dollars of bad checks to dog breeders in Pennsylvania. He claimed his checkbook was stolen, and the charges were ultimately expunged from his record. And he still faces several obstacles: a House Ethics Committee probe and a federal investigation into his campaign finances. Yet he remains defiant about staying on the job.
The reality is I won by a decisive margin. I had a very expressive, decisive victory.
And Aaron, it appears as though Congressman Santos is still raising money. The Federal Election Commission is asking him to declare whether he plans to run again in 2024 after he crossed a post-election fundraising threshold that now requires him to make a formal declaration. The FEC says he has until next month, so about mid-March, to reply.
Wow. Eva, thank you very much for all of your reporting. And Eva's reporting comes as Santos faces growing scrutiny after CNN learned that he was charged with theft and deception in Pennsylvania by 2017. Right, Eva mentioning the checks. There were about 9 of them, totaling $15,000. They were written in his name to dog breeders in Amish County. A lawyer friend of Santos telling CNN that he eventually got the case dismissed. Out front now, Harry Sandick, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. And Harry, of course, Santos is now facing multiple investigations. This isn't just people saying that he's a liar. These are real investigations. He's got an FBI probe into allegations that he stole $3,000 that was intended to save a veteran's dying service dog. What does this latest allegation mean for him?
So I think each of these gets put on the pile of allegations, gets higher and higher. And in federal court, there's a rule, and it's the same rule in certain state courts, that if you've committed other bad acts, those can be used against you in other cases. And so I think his primary concern is probably the investigation into campaign finance fraud. That's a federal investigation. It's in his home district, the Eastern District of New York. But all of these other allegations that your reporter was just talking about with you are potentially admissible against him to prove his intent, to prove that he's not someone who acted by mistake, but someone who has repeatedly acted with fraudulent intent.
Now, you talk about campaign finance being what you're most concerned about. There are 37 different instances of him, Harry, listing campaign expenses in the amount of $199.99, which is 1 cent under the threshold for needing a receipt. And he spent this money on almost anything: Ubers, hotels, planes, trains, parking, Target. And there's been a lot of investigations. Philip Bump had done some great work showing that, well, you can't get $199.99 at JFK parking, right? The Miami Herald's done some amazing reporting showing you can't get these amounts at the places that they said they were ostensibly from. How big of a problem could these be for Santos?
I think that's where the real problem lies for a couple of reasons. First of all, if those charges are not true, and of course, because there's no receipt, we have no way of knowing. And the reporting that you've talked about suggests that they may not be true. And it's against the law to lie in a federal election report. Number two, did he in fact use those for the stated purpose, or did he just use it for himself? Did he, just use it for his own personal living expenses? That would be a crime. He's not allowed to convert money from his campaign to his own personal use. And then in addition to that, there are the allegations that where did he get all of the money that he used to, donate for himself to his own campaign? If those funds came from individuals who wanted to donate money to the campaign and they sort of laundered it through him, that would be the use of what they call straw donors, except here the straw donor is Santos himself. So all of these things are potentially federal crimes.
All right. Harry Sandek, thank you very much for laying all of it out. Appreciate your time. And next, Senator John Fetterman, who's still recovering from last year's stroke, is back home after he was feeling lightheaded. He spent 2 days in the hospital. Luckily, though, is home now. And we'll tell you what we're learning. Finally tonight, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is out of the hospital after 2 days of observation and tests. He was admitted Wednesday after feeling lightheaded in Washington. Of course, he suffered a stroke at the height of the campaign season last year. His communications director tonight says he was discharged tonight. And in addition to the test ruling out a stroke, that his EKG test results came back normal with no evidence of seizures. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll be back at 9 p.m. Anderson starts now.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's chief medical correspondent. This season on Chasing Life, I sit down with some of the most intimidating guests I have ever interviewed. My 3 teenage daughters. I'm on a personal journey to find answers. How is social media really impacting my daughter's health? And ultimately, what is all of this technology really doing to our brains? Listen to Chasing Life on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast app.